Privacy is a buzzword that everybody is using these days to get you to trust an app, a website, a mobile device, a home camera system, you name it. Unfortunately, most companies are never held accountable to these marketing tactics, and the times when they are, that usually means you've already been screwed. I could spend hours telling you stories of false privacy claims, but to make things as useful for you as I can, I'm boiling it down to 7 categories that are the worst privacy offenders and what you can do about it. A few years ago, an FCC investigation revealed that 4 of the largest telecom providers in the US, that's AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, and Verizon, were selling data they had collected on us, including demographics, websites visited, GPS location data, and so much more, to anybody who's willing to pay for it. And this happens everywhere around the world, not just the US, I promise you. So when you read statements like, "We take the privacy and security of our customers very seriously," you really ought to take that with a grain of salt. Whether it's your wireless provider or your internet service provider at your home, you need to be aware that general data about what you do and where you go is at least visible to the company you use. And even when you're told that that data is anonymized or aggregated, don't let that fool you. If late night host John Oliver can legally track diplomats in the Washington, D.C. area,
so we could now take steps to identify him, just like we could with all these others who clicked on one of our ads in the Capitol Hill area this week, including at least 3 who may have been inside the Capitol building itself.
Then it is scary to think about what your mobile provider or ISP can track about you as well. Using a VPN or virtual private network to encrypt your data before it reaches these companies is one step you can take, but VPNs land in the number 2 spot of this list of the worst privacy guarantees. If you visit most any VPN website, you'll see bold claims of complete anonymity and privacy, some going so far as to include it in their name. I've said this many times before, and I'll say it here again. A VPN is a tool, not a cloak of invisibility. Using a VPN to hide internet browsing activity from your mobile provider or internet service provider is effective, but what you're effectively doing is trading your distrust in one company for blind trust in another. And since most of these VPN companies are based outside of any major country jurisdiction, a feature that many online influencers present as a strength, then they have zero accountability to their privacy claims. The mobile providers that I mentioned earlier were fined hundreds of millions of dollars for their privacy violations. I don't know of any VPN company that has ever been fined or disciplined in any way. I use a VPN just like I use a mobile phone, but I'm also aware of these limitations and I'm careful how I use it. You should too. I hate to say it, but the credit cards that you keep in your wallet are another part of our lives that we assume have some level of privacy when they absolutely do not. Your purchasing habits and history are extremely valuable to advertisers, retailers, and banks. And these credit card companies, they know that. It's a lucrative part of their business. Now, although credit cards aren't exactly promoting privacy as a selling point, I feel like it's an implied feature. I mean, you don't want everyone to know how you spend your money and where you spend it, right? You can pay with cash, but that's annoying. You can opt out of data sharing with many financial institutions, but there are loopholes and really they make it quite difficult to do this. And if you've been watching all things secured videos for a while, you know that you can also use virtual cards to hide your data from merchants and even from your bank. You can learn more about that here, or you can just go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It costs you nothing, and in return, I promise you an increase in your overall privacy and security online. Speaking of which, did you know that a lot of your personal data is already floating around on the internet? Things like your home address, your cell phone number, your property records, court records, and more are available to any company or person who wants to purchase it. That's one of the reasons that I use, and you've heard me recommend DeleteMe, a service that erases you from the multitude of data brokers that sell your info. They've also made this video possible through sponsorship, which I'm grateful for, but hopefully you know me well enough to trust that I only recommend services and products that I use myself. Until recently, this service was available only to US residents, and you can still get a discount using the code ATS at checkout. But I'm happy to say that they've expanded to serve an international audience. So if that's you, visit international.joindeleteme.com to see if they cover your country of residence. Dating apps. Ooh, really any app or service where you're given the option to create a pseudonym is dangerous. The danger isn't really in the app or the service itself, but rather in the feeling of security that comes when we think that our profile or what we do on that platform is anonymous. Last year, Grindr, a kind of social media and dating app, was caught collecting highly detailed user data and selling it to third parties. Now, they've since claimed that they're no longer doing that, but as with many of these companies, there's really no way to verify these privacy claims. Whenever you're using a pseudonym on sites like, Reddit, dating apps, or other social platforms, it's best to assume that whatever you say or do can be traced back to your real identity. Unfortunately, this problem's been exposed in places where privacy is a legitimate expectation and concern. Recently, BetterHelp, an online counseling service, had to settle charges that they shared user data with Facebook and Snapchat for purposes of advertising. I mean, come on. We're talking about sensitive mental health or counseling for a variety of personal issues here. I'm glad that the FTC has cracked down on this to avoid a major erosion of trust, because I know in some cases online help is the only option for some people. I mean, if you can get help with a counselor in person, that would be ideal, but I know that's not always possible. So please be careful when you're dealing with your health data. Scrutinize those who request it, and then make sure you trust the companies to whom you provide it. It's becoming more and more common for people to set up cameras not just outside their house for security, but also inside for monitoring. The assumption of privacy here is pretty strong, yet last year the popular Eufy security cameras were caught uploading videos and even facial recognition data to their servers, even when that setting was turned off. Personally, I don't trust these security cameras, but if I did, it would be on a closed local network where the footage is being recorded to a hard drive, not to the cloud, and definitely not accessible from the internet. Yes, I realize that that limits the usefulness of these cameras, but I mean, hey, we've made it this far as a human race without cameras in our personal space. I don't know why it's suddenly a necessary evil now. Blockchain and cryptocurrencies have long been hailed as the decentralized savior of the data-hungry internet world. And there's some truth to that, but there's also nuance. Public blockchain, such as the one that serves Bitcoin, is by nature public. Everything that is done on the chain is recorded and publicly available. And although identities aren't necessarily tied to the specific wallet addresses, there are ways to gather that kind of info, especially if you're using exchange platforms like Coinbase, Binance, or others. There are privacy-focused projects like Monero that claim to be untraceable, but if you're under the impression that all crypto in general is a privacy tool, that's simply not true. If you've learned anything from this video, my hope is that you never assume privacy, even when a company markets it as a feature. And if you disagree with what I've shared here or want to add something, please type out your constructive criticism as a comment below. Thanks to DeleteMe for their support of all things secured. You can watch my review of their service here or visit their website to find out how they can help you build better privacy here.